Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
And this is episode
69, dudes!
And today we're talking about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Released in 1989, directed by Stephen Herrick, written by Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, and starring Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, and George Carlin. This is a movie, I don't know when you first saw it, John, but this is a movie that I grew up on, basically. I used to watch this movie all the time when I was a kid.
That is, I have no relation to that whatsoever.
Really? So, did not grow up on Bill and Ted?
I did not grow up on Bill and Ted at all. I do remember, though, seeing Bill and Ted merchandise or just references a lot. In the early 90s and stuff like that. So, definitely knew who they were. I don't think I actually saw this movie for the first time until maybe when I was in college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a long time. So, I didn't even see it at all growing up.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It was, I have no memory of seeing it for the first time. I don't think I saw it in the theater. I think it was just something that we either rented from Blockbuster or was on TV one day or something. I don't know. And maybe we taped it or something. I don't recall, but I remember watching it all the time. We didn't own it either, so it must have been something we taped on TV or something. Or maybe I just rented it that often. I don't know.
So this would fall in the category of like Ghostbusters
just
and
about, yeah.
Back to the Future, stuff like that. But
maybe not quite as high. I mean, I probably watched those movies more.
Uh-huh.
And I probably also watched those at a younger age. But,
okay.
I mean, this one came out in 89. This is the same as Batman. So I would have been like 6 years old when it came out, and I probably didn't see it until I was a little bit older than that. But like Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, those came out when I was like 1 and 2 years old. So I feel like those were shown to me from birth, essentially,
right.
Just about. But with this one, no, not quite as much. But it is in that, I mean, the nostalgia factor is kind of almost there. Not, like I said, not quite as much as Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, but it's almost there.
It's funny because when we were talking about doing this movie, my initial thought was Bill and Ted with that like pale, powdery looking guy that is, I'm assuming, from the sequel.
Yes, from Bogus Journey.
Right, which
That's
I've
Death.
never seen.
You've never seen Bogus Journey?
No.
I wasn't going to say this because I figured we'd save it for whenever we talk about Bogus Journey, but I don't think I was either not allowed to see Bogus Journey when it came out. I remember wanting to see it in theaters because it was Bill and Ted, but I think I was either not allowed to see it or my parents just had no interest in taking me. I don't remember really which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why I think maybe I wasn't allowed is because in that movie they die and go to hell.
Oh.
And so they go to heaven too. They kind of like get caught in between type of thing.
Okay.
They end up, it's the guy that you're talking about, that's Death.
Uh-huh.
So they get killed and Death comes, and I think I can't remember, I do remember them going to hell and having different like of their own kind of personal hells. But then it's been a while since I've seen it. They end up challenging Death to a game, which is like a spoof off of an old movie called The Seventh Seal, an Ingmar Bergman film. But they challenge him to a game, and they keep beating him, and he gets all pissed off. And so eventually they do end up going into heaven with Death. I remember that. And Death has to, like, wear a disguise or something. I don't know. It's a bizarre movie.
Okay.
It's different than this one. So I haven't seen that one as much, but I have seen it, and I do like it. But this one's better, in my opinion. So you didn't really have much of a memory of this movie either. Had you seen it since that one time you saw it? Probably the first time you saw it? So you've seen this movie all
This was the
two times?
Yeah, I mean, I might have seen bits and pieces, but I mean, I couldn't remember anything.
Yeah.
In fact, I completely forgot George Carlin was in it.
Right.
But he's really not in it that long.
He's not. It's more of it's almost a cameo, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rufus. There was also a Bill and Ted animated series.
I was going to ask that.
That I watched as well, yeah.
And I don't remember if I watched or not. I obviously had to a little bit to even remember it, but I'd like to go back and watch some of those episodes and see if I could kind of like remember any of it or
Yeah, I looked while I was watching the movie. I looked it up on Amazon because there's not like as far as I know, there's not like a season 1, season 2 out to buy. But there was like a best of. There was 2 DVDs that was like best of Bill and Ted's. I think they were called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures or something like that. There's a volume 1 and a volume 2 DVD. And I should have bought them a long time ago because they used to be like $4 or something like that. And now they're, I'm assuming, out of print. And Amazon doesn't sell it, but you can buy it from somebody selling it through Amazon. And it was $55 for volume 1. I was like, well, that dream is dead.
Wow.
So I'm pretty sure you could look it up on YouTube. I'm sure there's a full episode or 2 on YouTube.
Right.
And it's one of those things where the reason I never really pulled the trigger and bought them is because I know I liked them as a kid. But I don't know if I could sit through like a whole episode now as an adult.
It's a little different. A little different.
So I was like, this would just take up space on my DVD.
Though I did recently purchase the entire series of Rocko's Modern Life.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And yeah, it's pretty fun to watch still.
Yeah. I used to do an impression of that character. I don't remember the character's
Filbert?
name. Maybe. Is he the guy that...
He's the turtle.
Yeah. Turn the page.
Yep, that's Filbert.
That's all. I just remember that one episode. If I could find that one episode, I would rewatch it because that would be awesome.
I mean, I've got it.
You've got it.
I've got
now,
the whole series.
So this is a big movie to me. I really like it. In fact, I just found a website recently called Redbubble.com, which is one of those websites where you can submit artwork and then they'll print it onto a T-shirt, and so anybody can buy that artwork if they want to. And I'm actually surprised that they have as much as they do, and it's not copyright infringement. There's actually like a link at the bottom of each page that says like copyright infringement, so you can click on it. Unfortunately, maybe nobody has, ratted anybody out, I guess. But I saw one that I really want to get, and it's a circle. It's not the exact same logo as from the movie, but there's a pig in the middle, and it says "I was a Ziggy Piggy." So I was like,
"Oh." So I'll say my favorite things about this movie was it's got to be Napoleon.
Yeah.
The Napoleon scenes were awesome. Yeah, I loved those.
Yeah, he's great, and it's interesting to watch this movie as an adult because as a kid, especially when I was real young, I didn't pick up on certain things, like things that are not subtle. Like I didn't understand that Napoleon when I was a kid. I have no recollection of like realizing that he was French. Even though he speaks French throughout the entire movie. I don't think he ever says anything in English except maybe buddy.
It seems like he might have said one thing. But,
yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. And I can only imagine, like Socrates.
Right, yeah. Beef oven. Those are my favorites. Frood. Yeah, so it's some of the time travel also confused me a little bit as a kid as well. I remember thinking that, like especially towards the end of the film where they're talking about going back after their report and doing things. Right,
which was really, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I really liked the way that was done.
I do too. I really love it. It kind of goes with, it's interesting that we decided to talk about this movie because, especially right after Endgame, because number one, they reference it in Endgame, but also because the time travel aspect works so much differently in this movie than it does in Endgame. In this movie, you can go back in time and change the past, and it will absolutely affect your future.
Right.
But it's also one of those things like I was talking about where even though you haven't time traveled yet, you've already affected the quote-unquote past or future. And so things like him saying, like, I have to remember to go back in time, steal my dad's keys, and we'll leave them right here.
Right.
And then they're like, here they are.
Yeah.
So I kind of love that whole aspect of it. And that's one of the first notes I wrote was...
but that's proof that he remembered. Because if he hadn't remembered, they wouldn't have been there.
Right, yeah, that's true. And they would have been like, well, what's plan B? Yeah, and Ted, who forgot to wind his watch in the beginning, remembered a lot of things at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
He remembered the trash can and the keys and the tape recorder.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why they did that whole remember to wind your watch, and then I don't know. Is it... Because that affected where they went in time, too.
They thought they had more time than they did. Because I remember there was a couple times where Bill asked Ted, they were like, how much time do we have? And he's like, tons. And it was because he thought they had like 10 hours until their book report, or until their oral report. But really, when they talked to Rufus, they only had 2 hours left.
Right.
Because he forgot to wind his watch. So if he hadn't forgotten to wind his watch, they might not have picked up as many historical figures because they were a little bit more on time crunch.
Okay.
I don't know. I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is true or not. I haven't done a whole lot of research into the making of this movie. Or, I don't even know, is there a commentary? I let you borrow the DVD. Did you notice if there was like a commentary on that DVD?
I didn't notice.
No, not at all. The only special feature is theatrical trailer. Anyway, but I read that originally it wasn't a phone booth, it was going to be a van. Which kind of makes sense because bands travel around in vans, you know.
Oh, right.
But
the Wild Stallions.
Yeah, exactly. But I think they scrapped it because they were worried that it was going to be too much of a Back to the Future ripoff to have a time-traveling vehicle.
Well, I was going to say, though, like, Doctor Who?
Yeah, well, that's I guess they didn't care about that. Maybe it's because it was
Doctor Who was out
show.
before this.
Oh, yeah. Doctor Who, like, started in the 60s or something.
Did it?
Yeah, originally, I think.
So, wait, the 80s one was a remake? Or was like a reboot? Because there was one in the 80s, too.
It might have been. Because I know
those might have been reruns.
They might have been.
That I'm thinking about. Because there was a...
it's been on for a long time, though.
Yeah. There was a whole, like, instance called... what was it? The Max Headroom, like...
Yeah.
Thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I'm talking about? Where, like, there was, like, someone hacked a broadcast.
Yes.
And it was during a Doctor Who episode, but it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
So
it might have been a rerun.
I was just automatically assuming that it was the 80s, but it could have been a rerun from the 60s.
Could have been.
Yeah.
But it was on for a long time. I don't know when I'm pretty sure it started in the 60s, and I don't know when it stopped. But when they restarted it in 2005, I think, it wasn't like I guess it was a reboot, but it was supposed to be like a continuation. Because all of those doctors are supposed to be the same being.
Right.
But anyway, I don't watch Doctor Who. I know some people who do watch Doctor Who. And it used to be, the old episodes used to be available streaming, either on Netflix or...
You mean of the current season?
Both. I think
Or
I
series?
tried to watch like the very first episode of Doctor Who. It was in black and white.
I gotcha. Of the original?
Yeah, and I had a hard time getting into it.
I started the new one, and it was pretty good. But I only got maybe to like episode 7 or 8, and I just never picked it back up.
From the new one, I could never get past the first season. And everybody told me, just get past the first season. Once you're in the second season, you'll love it. Because that's when David Tennant, I think, shows up. Christopher Eccleston, which I like him as an actor. I didn't have a problem.
He's the original one, right?
Yeah.
I liked him a lot.
I didn't have a problem with him. It was just, for whatever reason, I just couldn't get into the show. It was kind of cheesy and stuff, which I can get over. But
right. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. So I didn't really... I didn't see... Everybody kind of goes nuts over that show, and I didn't really see what the appeal was. But maybe I need to give it another chance. But as far as I know, I don't think it's streaming anymore. Or at least not on... It's not on Netflix, I don't think. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll probably be on Disney.
It probably will. Disney owns everything, so it probably will. So anyway, back to Bill and Ted. This movie was a decent success, I believe. I don't know what the production budget was exactly, but it made $40 million domestically. I don't know if it made more worldwide or not, but pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I never have seeing the movie. Like, I remember Bill and Ted being kind of an 80s icon, even though you said it came out in 89, so I guess it would have been leaning...
Almost
kind of bleeding
90s.
into the 90s, yeah. But definitely, knew who they were.
Yeah. One of those things where I also wondered, because I don't remember seeing... you just kind of reminded me of this by saying it was like an 80s staple type thing. They reference Star Wars in this movie. When they're dressed up in the medieval armor, they're sword fighting, and one of them says... I am your father, and he's like, and the other one, I forget what they said. He says Darth Ted. I'm Darth Ted. Right. He's like, I'm your father. He's like, I'm Luke Bill, which I thought was kind of funny. But I wondered, because I don't have a memory of seeing Empire Strikes Back for the first time, and I know we've already talked about this with the other Star Wars episodes. My parents didn't show me Star Wars like they should have, perhaps.
Oh, you didn't watch it in order?
No, the first one I remember seeing was Return of the Jedi. And then, like I said, I don't recall. The first time I ever saw A New Hope, I'm fairly certain, was when it was re-released in theaters in 97.
Oh, wow.
And then, so like I said, I know I had seen Empire Strikes Back before then because I remember like the Battle of Hoth and all that. But I don't remember when I saw it. So I'm curious if Bill and Ted or some other movie perhaps is what kind of, I heard that I am your father line, from this movie or from something else of pop culture before I saw Empire Strikes Back. But anyway, when he said that line, I was like, I wonder if this is the movie that like spoiled it for me. Because it's just one of those things that you've always known. You've always known, for people our age, that Darth Vader was Luke's father.
Right.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry. No, what I was thinking about when they started doing that was I was like, Star Wars was like A New Hope. Like, I guess if you really want to, from the line, you would compare it to Empire. And Empire hadn't even been out 10 years when they were doing that. So, and this is really freaky. Like, we haven't even done a movie or did we do The Matrix? We haven't done The Matrix, have we?
We haven't, no.
But I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, that's about to be 20 years old.
Yep. I would like to do an episode on that because I actually recently rewatched that not too long ago, and I wouldn't mind watching it again, but because it's 20 years old, like when I was rewatching it with Denise.
Actually, it's going to be 20 this year because it came out in 99.
Yeah, it came out in 99. So I don't remember what month it came out, but it's either already 20 years old or it's about to be 20 years old.
Wow. Yeah, we definitely need to try to, if it hasn't happened yet, we need to try to plan that.
Yeah. But that made me feel old because I was like, dang.
I remember talking about The Matrix in high school.
I was obsessed with it when it came out.
I didn't see it in the theater, but I saw it like a couple years after it came out. Actually, it might have even been just a year. And I mean that movie. Well, we'll talk. I was
gonna say I'm gonna save my Matrix story for the Matrix episode, but you're right though. I mean, Return of the Jedi. And I read somewhere again. I don't know if this is true. You kind of have to take IMDb trivia with a grain of salt because it's user created or whatever. But I read that this movie was actually shot in like 86. But the production company went bankrupt before they could release it, and then it eventually got released by MGM or something.
Well, the year in the movie is 88.
Right, so it's a year before it got released. So maybe they were shooting for an 88 release, and it got pushed back by about a year. So when they shot the movie, Empire was only about 6 years old, and Return of the Jedi, I almost said Return of the King. Return of the Jedi was only 3 years old.
Yeah.
If they actually did shoot it in 86. So. And which would also make it a little bit more of an 80s movie.
Right.
If it was shot in 86.
Very
but then
true.
Came out in 89. But
you said Lord of the Rings?
Yeah. Return of the
That is almost 20 years old also.
But 18?
It'll
be 18 this year?
No.
18 years old this year.
That's depressing.
Time just keeps moving on.
It does.
It's crazy.
If only we had a phone booth.
Yeah, I know. No kidding, right? So one of my notes, something I never really thought about before, because I've never really watched this movie kind of with a critical eye any sort. But so at the end of the movie, when they're doing all those things, they have to remember to do all those things, and all those things are coming or like actually happening.
Right.
I take it that the people from the future know that a helper from the future went back in time and helped Bill and Ted ace their history final. Like, it wasn't one of those things where it was like, it's not like Terminator, where they have to send somebody back to stop something from happening, otherwise the fate of the future is in jeopardy. Technically, it is in jeopardy. If they were to fail their history final, the future as they know it wouldn't happen. But I assume all the people from the future know that they sent somebody back.
Right, that's like part of their lore. And everything.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, like, Rufus is almost like the chosen one. Like,
right.
Because they probably knew it was a guy named Rufus. And so Rufus was, like, destined to be the guy to go back and help Bill and Ted.
I mean, the way this movie's written, that's the way
that's how
it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also was thinking that, I mean, supposedly Rufus is from 700 years in the future.
Right.
And these guys Bill and Ted are essentially like the saviors of the modern world. You would think Rufus would be like fangirling at meeting, Bill and Ted.
He's just
totally,
so
he's so calm and cool. Yeah.
Did they ever say what made them decide to start basically worshiping Bill and Ted? Besides their was it just their music?
I think it's just their music. Yeah, I think Rufus at the end talks about how their music.
Oh, that's right.
Ends famines and brings people together, and peace is So it's just their music, and which is hilarious because at the end of this movie they still don't even know how to play their instruments or anything.
Right. And I liked the reference when he looks and is like, they do get better.
Yeah. George Carlin, I thought was actually it's kind of a weird role for him if you think about it, because he's not funny. It's not like a really comedic role of Rufus, other than that little joke at the end. But he's really good in it. I can't imagine. I mean, I guess I can imagine somebody else in it. Apparently, they were trying for real big names at first. Mm-hmm. They wanted Sean Connery or something, and then somebody apparently just kind of was like, what about George Carlin? And somebody else was like, oh, that's a great idea. And they reached out to him and he said yes or something. Again, this is all taken off IMDb, I think, but I think he's really good as Rufus. I can't imagine somebody else playing Rufus. So this is definitely the first Keanu Reeves movie I ever saw. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, what
was he in before this?
He had done some movies that I think I still have not seen.
So this was his first big movie?
Let me look. I want to say yes, but I could be wrong. I think he might have done My Own Private Idaho with Gus Van Sant before this. That was obviously not something I would have seen as a kid. So let me look just to be safe here. He'd done a movie called River's Edge that I've heard about, but I've never seen. I think Crispin Glover's in that. So you got Crispin Glover and Keanu Reeves. Yeah, he is. Which makes me want to see it even more. He had done Dangerous Liaisons. So he had done a couple things. Nothing huge.
Right.
He did River's Edge, something called The Night Before, something called Permanent Record, something called The Prince of Pennsylvania. Dangerous Liaisons was a pretty big movie. It had Glenn Close and John Malkovich and stuff. Never seen that one either. And then Bill and Ted. So yeah, it was probably one of his first. It was definitely one of his first leading roles. Although, like I said, The River's Edge, he might have had a leading role in that too. And it might have been one of his, maybe his biggest movie to come out at that point. Because it was, like I said, it was a decent success. It got a sequel made,
right?
So
and
it got an animated series made.
I think it was probably a lot harder to get a sequel made back then than it is today.
Yeah. So it probably was I won't say it's the movie that launched him into stardom, because I really think that would be more Speed in '94. But it was a movie that definitely probably opened some doors for him. Which is funny because the whole movie he's like, whoa. He's playing he's kind of got a surfer dude type voice and everything.
And it's funny because you never really see... Keanu Reeves is one of those actors that kind of has a reputation for just being kind of flat.
Sure.
And acting the same in all his movies and stuff. And this is way different than the typical thought of how Keanu Reeves acts.
Right. I love Keanu Reeves, and I think part of the reason why people think that of him is because he does kind of almost have that surfer guy voice. It's exaggerated in this movie, but in Speed or in The Matrix, he does kind of have that, just that way he talks. It's just kind of the way he talks. And I think some people have a hard time getting over that, because I don't think he's a bad actor by any means. And I think I remember reading back when, I think it was Constantine came out, which you and I saw in the theater together.
Did we?
I think we did. I think we saw it with Brody.
I remember seeing it in the theater. Yeah, that seems like... Okay.
And we didn't like it. I've kind of grown a little bit more... I think I won't go so far to say that I really like it or anything, but I think I appreciate it a little more now. And I think it's mostly just because of Keanu Reeves. Mm-hmm. I remember reading an interview with Shia LaBeouf, because he's in that movie. You probably don't recall that. Cause
No.
at the time, he wasn't as big
Yeah,
as he
like
is
the
now.
first movie that I noted him was Transformers.
Yeah. And this was 2 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
So he plays like Constantine's like sidekick kind of thing in that movie. Anyway, I read an article.
I take that back. It was Even Stevens.
Oh, yeah. I remember him from Even Stevens.
Yeah.
But he talked about Keanu Reeves and how like much of a hard worker he is, and just how he's always like ready to do anything, and
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about him too.
he just seems like, and just from what I've seen videos online and whatnot, he just seems like a genuinely good dude. So I always like Keanu Reeves. I'll try to go see pretty much anything he
acting
makes.
wise, I really don't know a lot of what I've seen of his besides I've seen The Matrix, Constantine. I don't remember that well. I've seen the first John Wick,
Mm-hmm.
and Speed, and that might be it.
Speed is one of my
Speed's a
all-time
good movie.
favorite action movies. What do you think about Alex Winter, Bill S. Preston Esquire?
I like him as Bill. I mean,
Yeah.
Is there another Bill? There's not. He's definitely
He's
Bill.
Yeah. He obviously did not have the same career path as Keanu Reeves. I don't want to say he's less successful, because I think he's doing less acting now, and I believe he's become more of a documentary filmmaker.
Okay.
So he's still working and doing well and everything, but he's not obviously the level of stardom as Keanu Reeves. But other than this movie, and I remember seeing him in, they did like a remake of that movie Freaks. Do you remember that movie Freaks from like the 20s or something like that? 20s or 30s?
No.
I think they did a remake of it, and he was in that. But other than that, like, I haven't seen him in anything. Really.
Yeah, I mean, when did that remake of Freaks come out?
It's probably the early 90s or something,
Gotcha.
It was probably in between Bill and Ted 1 and 2, I guess. I don't know. So I don't, as far as his acting goes, I really have only seen Bill and Ted. So I don't know how he is outside of these movies. But he's perfect as Bill, I think. I think he does a great job.
Yeah. Is there talk of a Bill and Ted
3? Yeah. So Bill and Ted 3 is, at the moment, called Bill and Ted Face the Music. And it's supposed to be Bill and Ted are in their 50s now, I guess. And they still haven't written that world-changing song yet. And that's all I really know about it at the moment. But I do know that they have a director attached to it, and it's the director of Galaxy Quest. And I figured that's a pretty good choice for director.
Okay.
So it's supposed to come out next year. I don't think they've even started filming it yet.
Right.
So we'll see about that. But it's one of those things, I'm super excited about it because I do love Bill and Ted so much. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's not going to be as good as the first one, or even maybe the second one.
Right.
Just because it's coming out.
And
30
when
years.
movies are written, like, this one and Bogus Journey, like, there's kind of the way it's written is for that time period.
Right.
And you can't really capture you can, but it's really hard to capture that essence again.
Right. And the one good thing is the writers from the first two films are back, I believe, for the third film. So it's the same. It's not, some random dude who was like, I think Bill and Ted 3 would be a great idea, and wrote. I think it's actually the original writers have come up with an idea and wrote it. So that gives me a little bit of hope. But I mean, a lot changes in 30 years.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see, but I will go see it. I just I hope that whenever they do shoot it and the trailer comes out, I'm not just like super disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So for a long time, I thought that the guy that played Ted's dad was also Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. Not the case?
Not the case. I thought for sure for a long time. So I was also like, today I still thought that when I started the movie. And then I was like, well, Ted's dad plays Abraham Lincoln. This is before I think Abraham Lincoln showed up on screen. I was like, well, Ted's dad plays Abraham Lincoln. I was like, surely Bill's dad plays somebody else. And I thought maybe it was Sigmund Freud. But I looked it up, and I was completely wrong. Abraham Lincoln is a totally different actor, and Bill's dad doesn't play anybody else. So I was like, oh, I guess they just look kind of similar that I just, as a kid and everything, I just thought it was the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
But
so I had a question about his dad, by the way. He gets a prank call from Bill.
Yeah.
That his keys are at, the office.
This is Lieutenant Van Halen. Yeah, exactly.
So he goes, they leave. How is he going to go to the office? Is he walking there?
That's a good question. I assume it's not his car keys, but his police keys?
Okay.
You're right, though. Maybe he's got a bike. Maybe he's taking a bicycle to work.
Because my assumption was, it's his car keys. That's why he was looking for him. And then he gets a call that they've got his keys. So he's headed out the door to go get in his car.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask you about that.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a couple things in this movie that you kind of just have to be like, whatever, and kind of gloss over, I guess. Because I had a question about the timeline.
But no, hold on. I think you're right because... No, wait a minute.
The keys that they find at the end of the movie are the keys that unlock the cells.
Right.
So they are like police station keys, but
yeah,
usually people keep their car keys and work keys. But maybe not. Maybe he had a separate key ring for his
it's got to be the
police keys.
It's got to be the police keys.
Could be.
Yeah.
One of my questions was, and I realized, at first I was very confused, and then I realized that let me just start over. Bill and Ted have one night, essentially, to gather all the historical figures. And when they show up the next morning with everybody, Bill asks Missy if she can take him to the mall or to school or something.
I liked that, by the way. But he's like, "Hey, Missy, I mean, Mom."
Mom.
It's happened so many times.
Yeah. She's like, "Not until you finish your chores." And I'm like, "Isn't it a school day? Aren't they supposed to be going to school?"
Right.
But their report isn't until 2:45, so I guess it's not required of them to sit through everybody else's performance.
But everyone else had to.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't really quite understand.
By the way, if everyone in that auditorium had to do...
Oh, it would take...
Yeah.
It would take 3 years.
Yeah,
It would take forever.
Who had to do a project and who didn't.
Right. So it makes me think that everybody in the auditorium had already given their project weeks before or something, and they were the ones that had to sit through it. I don't know. It's one of those things I was like, I guess they don't have to be there. You'd think they would gotten points off for not sitting through other people's oral reports, but whatever. So I was a little confused by that. They show up and she's like, "Not until you do your chores." I'm like, "What is it, Saturday? What are they doing? When is this report being given?" So I didn't really understand that. I think, obviously that was really just in there so that they could have a little montage of...
I like how their chores were literally cleaning the entire house. Everything that you possibly had to do. The toilets, the dishes.
The windows.
Yeah,
yep.
Everything.
Vacuuming everything.
She's out there just pruning the flowers.
Yep. And I thought, too, that it would have honestly taken Bill and Ted less time to just do it all themselves rather than having to monitor all these historical figures who don't know what to do.
Probably, yeah.
So, Sigmund Freud vacuuming his face off and everything, it would just been faster for you to just vacuum.
Yeah.
I also love that the water park that Napoleon goes to is named Waterloo, which, was the Battle of Waterloo that Napoleon had and everything. So I thought that was funny and a little on the nose perhaps nowadays, but I didn't get it as a kid.
I think that works really well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a water park.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, Waterloo.
Yeah.
His stuff, Napoleon's stuff is pretty good. Him trying the ice cream for the first time.
Right.
And then I love how
last bite.
selfish he is, yeah.
It's mine.
And then the same thing with the water slide.
Right.
He takes a kid out of the...
Did you, and I like how, I mean, obviously you did see it because you've seen this movie 100 times, but I noticed how after he moves her, his hand goes up like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
I go next.
Yeah. It's pretty good. I also like the whole sequence at the mall, too, where they all get arrested, basically, but I noticed this time around, Beethoven's playing all these keyboards, and it's obvious the soundtrack is a guitar, but whatever. He's still supposedly rocking out on all these keyboards and everything. Joan of Arc is leading aerobics for whatever reason.
Right.
Genghis Khan.
I'm assuming because they made some kind of reference that she was going to start like that was
she was going to start an aerobics class like for her
right. So I'm wondering maybe
they're
like something with Joan of Arc has to do with the way she trained.
Maybe.
Like, I don't like. She was a general.
I know not a lot about Joan of Arc.
I just know that she had like visions,
right?
And people like followed her.
Yeah, and she was young,
right? She was like, I thought she was 14. They mentioned 17
before. Well, he said all before the age of 17, so right. I don't know. Yeah,
but I was wondering maybe like they had exercises that she was like one of the first noted people to do. I don't know.
That could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know who the Go-Go's are? The band, the Go-Go's. They sing that song "Vacation."
Yes.
The woman that played Joan of Arc was in that band.
Gotcha.
Yeah, she was a member of the Go. I don't know if she was a founding member of the Go-Go's, but she was in the Go-Go's probably around the time this movie came out.
They also sing that other song.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called.
It's like "As Long as I See You" or something.
That's not the one I was thinking of.
Oh, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
I think I do. We Got the Beat. That's the one I was thinking of.
Ah, gotcha. Did they do "As Long as I See You"?
That might not be the title because nothing's coming up for that.
Our Lips Are Sealed.
Oh, yeah. I see that one here.
It is the Go-Go's.
So, yeah, anyway, she's in the Go-Go's, Joan of Arc.
Gotcha.
And she had... I guess she did have a line. I don't remember her really speaking it all in this movie, but it does show her praying in the jail cell, and when Bill and Ted walk in, she says, "Messy."
Right.
But I think that's like her only line, really, in that whole
So
movie.
how did they cut the jail bars? Did they show that? Or does...
Oh, on the window?
Yeah.
To get out of the window?
Yeah.
I don't think they showed it.
It just cuts and it's done.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't
That
recall.
was really fast.
That was really fast. Well, also, I had a question about that scene, too. He goes, "Remember a trash can. Remember a trash can." And then from the ceiling or something, a trash can falls onto his dad. So I don't know how he rigged that trash can up there and nobody saw it, number one. Also, they had to like sneak around. They snuck around the police station to get everybody out, but then they have to go back after their report and sneak around again.
Right.
To leave the tape recorder and the trash can and the little written note.
Yeah, this time without any help.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So, interesting little paradox perhaps there, I guess.
Yeah.
I have some of my, I love some lines from this movie, especially when, I can't remember if it's when Rufus shows up or when Bill and Ted 2 show up, essentially. And Ted turns to Bill and goes, "Something is afoot at the Circle K." I just love that line. Something is afoot.
So, the first time that Bill and Ted see themselves, I saw people in the future Bill and Ted's phone booth.
Yes.
But to me, it looked like a couple girls.
Oh, like it was the princesses.
Like it was the princesses.
Right. And
then when they show up at the end of the movie, it looked... Because I thought... I hadn't seen the princess... I didn't remember the princesses.
Sure.
So I didn't remember what they looked like. And the two girls that I thought I saw almost had like an 80s style to them.
Which is what they look like at the end, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like wondering... I wanted to go back and look and see, but I didn't. And to see if it was maybe actually the princesses that were originally in the future phone booth, and it was like some kind of mistake or something.
I don't know. I didn't catch that this time around, so I'd have to go back and watch myself. I'm not sure. I have always liked that scene, though, with them showing up and present Bill and Ted being super confused about it.
Right.
And that's actually, I laughed out loud, even though I've seen this movie 100 times. I laughed out loud this time watching it because when they go, "What number are we thinking of?" And they say, "69, dudes." And then Bill and Ted just look so amazed that they had gotten that number right. They were like, "Whoa!" Like their minds were blown. And I couldn't help it. I just laughed out loud.
That's their character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just complete exaggeration.
Yeah.
And they're complete idiots.
They are. They're complete idiots.
That's what they're supposed to be.
But they're like super lovable idiots. Yeah.
And somehow they manage to be able to get smart with things. Like, for instance, leaving the keys, stuff like that. Like, they're complete idiots, but they're also able to just not be.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
true. Yeah.
Like the report.
Right.
Like being able to
pull
that off.
Yeah, they managed to learn things along the way, too, because they're studying for the test or the report before they meet Rufus, and Ted knows nothing really. You know, they're like, "Who's George Washington?" He's like, "The guy from the dollar bill."
Right.
You know, and like,
right. It's blatantly
he was born on President's Day.
Yeah, that they're just complete airheads.
Right. And so we never see it, but I assume it all occurred from talking to the actual people, even though half of them speak a different language, that they learned about them enough to give the oral report.
Right.
And they actually call Socrates rather than Socrates
right.
during the presentation and everything. And
Socrates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. They said when they go back and see Socrates for the first time, somebody says something about Socrates, or maybe Socrates says his own name or something.
Yeah, he does. Because they introduce themselves.
Yeah.
And then
But before that happens, they see him and they're like Socrates. They're like, I recognize that from history class.
Oh, so they said it right that time?
Yeah, and well, they hand him. I think Ted hands Bill the book, or vice versa. And he goes, "It's in our history book, dude." And he goes, "Look, it's under Socrates." And so like,
that's funny.
Yeah. So they just there was no connection there in their brain that Socrates and Socrates was the same thing.
I like how he immediately got the dust in the wind reference.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, and I love that his next like philosophy was the like sand through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. The
right.
soap opera like slogan or whatever.
Right. I got you.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
So a lot of funny stuff in this movie. I think it's a pretty decent little comedy. I did mention it's a little bit of a goof, I guess you could say. When Napoleon first sees Bill and Ted, he uses a telescope. You know, it's one of those extending
right.
telescopes. And he looks at him, and they wave to him and get into the phone booth. And then an explosion happens right by Napoleon, and it knocks him into the air. And I guess it knocks him really far because he lands by the telephone booth and falls through the time hole. So that explosion propelled him really far.
Right.
Because even through the telescope, it doesn't look like Bill and Ted are very close.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a little interesting that explosion knocked him that far away. Either that or he has a really terrible telescope.
I watched this with my kids, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So they knew, like, you know, a lot of the characters, but, you know, Sigmund Freud,
mm-hmm.
They didn't know who that was.
I probably didn't know who that was either when I was a kid.
I don't remember hearing about Sigmund Freud until I was, like, in high school.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know if they knew who Socrates was and Genghis Khan. Yeah, they obviously knew Abraham Lincoln and stuff.
Right,
like
yeah. I feel like I probably knew Abraham Lincoln, Billy the Kid, and Beethoven. Were probably the only ones I knew as a kid. Joan of Arc, Sigmund Freud, Socrates. I don't think I knew who any of those people were.
You know, it's funny.
Or Genghis
Khan. I
Khan.
think I was introduced to Joan of Arc by Wishbone.
That dog TV show or something?
Yes. Do you remember that?
I don't think I ever watched it, but I do recall the TV show, yeah.
Yeah, Anyway.
You mentioned Genghis Khan, and it reminds me, every time I watch Die Hard, you remember the terrorist guy who takes his position by the, like, little candy counter, and he ends up like sneaking a candy bar out from underneath. It's like a Milky Way or something. He has always looked so familiar to me, and I don't know why I never just looked him up, but I couldn't remember what I'd known him from. He's Genghis Khan from Bill and Ted.
Wow.
It's the same guy. So I realized today watching it, I was like, that's where I know him from. I know him from Bill and Ted. But yeah, that guy, he doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue in this movie either.
No, he doesn't. Are we missing any one of the...
Billy the Kid.
He really, like, after his initial, like, pickup, doesn't
do a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
don't even, like, even in their report, he's just like...
He introduces Bill and Ted, and then he never says anything else. And I assume it's just... I like to think that he did come out and talk. We just didn't see it. It was part of the report. But I also love when they go to England, before they see the princesses for the very first time. Billy the Kid is like, where are we? And he's like, we're in ancient England or whatever. And he's like, excellent. And Bill goes, I'm not going to get the line exactly right, but Bill is like, you are reacting to the oddity of time travel like most excellently or something like that, and Billy the Kid's like, thanks. He's just totally cool. He's like, we're time traveling? That's cool.
Right. Can you imagine, like, being Billy the Kid? Or just yourself?
Yeah. I can imagine being myself.
Yeah. That's good. Just going through time, yeah, it would be very... Especially if you weren't, like, voluntarily doing it.
Right,
like,
right.
someone grabbed you and... well, no, he did go... He was hiding.
He was hiding and, like, got into
I like how they went in there and he goes, where are we going? So my first thought was, how does he know that the phone booth is going somewhere?
Right.
But I think it was I don't think it was so much that it was like they're hiding, and of course the big mob is coming right towards them, and they're in
a glass phone booth.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he thinks they're safe.
Right.
But it was like a question of where are we going? Maybe like where are we running to next?
That could be, yeah.
But still, the fact that they run into this enclosed area as a mob is coming to you, and they're like watching them get closer, and he's like, where are we going?
Yeah. But his reaction in that scene is good too, because I don't remember exactly what they say, but they say something like, that we're going to go to the future or something like that, and he goes, what? Like right before they kind of leave.
I wish I had heard that.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I missed that.
I thought it was interesting too that Bill and Ted get to go to the future and kind of see a glimpse into 700 years into the future. And again, I have to think that they knew they were coming. Again, it's probably part of their lore.
I don't know. They seem pretty surprised.
Yeah,
they took off their sunglasses and they're like, it's like, I don't remember exactly what they said, but they were like, it's them. And then everyone like comes.
That's kind of true, I guess. But that was why, like, everybody coming in, I thought everybody was just kind of waiting for the moment. Like, they were like, this is the day Bill and Ted arrive, So I thought they were all just kind of waiting in the wings to come out and see them, but I could be wrong. But again, there's like the saviors of their modern world, so you'd think they'd be like, freaking out.
But then again, modern technology, that's what Rufus says. So it's like time travel is not a big thing
Not
to
a
them.
thing to them, yeah. That's true, I guess. Maybe they've met Bill and Ted more than once already. You never know. Maybe they met old Bill and Ted before they met young Bill and Ted. You never know.
That's true, because old, especially if they're going to do something with this third movie, like old Bill and Ted are apparently going to be like the true famous ones.
Even though it showed young Bill and Ted on the Wild Stallions cover.
It did.
But
that's right.
Still. It could be, who knows? I really hope Bill and Ted Face the Music is good. I am curious if it's going to have a time travel element to it, or if, because part two might have a time travel element too. It's been too long since I've seen it. I can't totally remember. I think it does, actually. During the presentation. So they have had no time to really prepare for this oral presentation. Because they've been scrambling this whole
Right, they're just
night.
basically, most of the time that they've spent doing is gathering the people.
Yeah. So I like to think, it's not in the movie, and this is just my opinion, or my personal little theory, if you will. It's not even really theory, it's a joke mostly, but I like to think that Rufus is up in the light booth, controlling all the spotlights and everything on everyone, because it was perfectly timed on everybody.
Yeah, totally. I thought, the whole like oral presentation show was very interesting. How they were able to have all of that stuff.
Yeah, quite they had a lot of theatrics for basically just coming into the door, and
they were prepared for it.
Everybody was prepared for it.
When we get back with all these people, we need to have this.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're going to have the lights.
Did they? Because they had props too, didn't they?
They had a couch for Sigmund Freud. And
yeah.
They had, fake swords or whatever for Joan of Arc. They were sword fighting. Yeah, they had a lot. But the presentation was very good. And of course, they had music too, which, again, I assume Rufus was playing. It would be hilarious if he was actually playing a Wild Stallions album during the presentation.
I mean, do they have any other music in the future? I don't think so.
They probably don't.
It's
probably
just
Wild
Stallions.
Stallions. I do like the ending. The prince. It's weird that Rufus kind of. I mean, it's cool for Bill and Ted, but like he gets the princesses and brings them to the future, and he's like, "This is where you live now, I guess." Right. I mean, they're part of the band, so I guess Rufus felt like he had to do that.
That's a good point.
They're part of the band.
Not to mention they were being forced to marry
some
royal ugly dudes.
ugly dudes. So the princesses are there, and none of them know how to play their instruments. And I like how it ends. It ends on a good note. They do get better. Those guitars they get are very 80s. That Rufus gives them as a gift, kind of almost like a.
I was looking at those and
V-shape.
Yeah, it was like, well, yeah, but did you notice the top? Like they don't have
the tuning
right.
knobs. Yeah, I don't know how that works exactly.
They can't.
I mean, it's got to be able to be tuned somehow.
Yeah,
I assume those are real guitars, but I mean, maybe they're not. So,
well, I think they were supposed to be like they were from the future. So,
so maybe they're not real guitars. Maybe they're.
Yeah, I
from the
think
future.
they were supposed to look.
That could be. I never thought about the fact that they were probably from the future.
Yeah, I think they're futuristic.
That's a great
guitars.
point. That's interesting. I would be curious to know if those were actual guitars or if they were fake guitars. Anyway,
but if they're from the future, are those the guitars that Bill and Ted use to write?
If they're not using them in Bill
music?
and Ted 3.
But
then,
what I'm saying is, if that's the music,
yeah,
or if those are the guitars that they use to write the music based on
their excellent adventures,
or that created the society,
yeah,
would those guitars have existed without Bill and Ted's music?
It's a good question.
So how did Bill and Ted write the music with guitars that would have never existed had they not written the music?
It's a good point.
Yeah.
That is a great point. Another good question for you, which I can't verify this because I wasn't paying attention, but supposedly Rufus never introduces himself to Bill and Ted.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill and Ted from the present
When they
learn Rufus's name when Bill and Ted from the future see him and go, Rufus!
I gotcha.
So
That's
like,
hilarious.
Yeah, so they know his name because future them said his name.
Right.
But how did future them... But future them knew it because they were past
Right.
Bill and Ted and heard it.
Right.
But it's like, how did...
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those
No,
things
you're
where
right. Yeah.
how did anybody ever know to say Rufus?
They named him.
They did. His name wasn't Rufus before. He's like, well, I guess it's Rufus now. So I'd like to hear what your rating on the film is.
Okay. So this being my second time,
Sure.
not having any nostalgia
Yeah.
for the movie, I thought it was okay.
Right? Yeah.
I definitely like the creativity of the story and just how like the title, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I love the title of the movie and just the whole concept of what it is. I think it's kind of goofy.
Yeah.
Like not having the nostalgic part. I think I don't have as much. I know I don't have near as much enjoyment as you do for it.
I don't think my wife watched it as a kid either, because when I was watching it today, she wasn't really watching it with me, but she was in the room, and she just was like, this. She wasn't liking it at all because she just couldn't handle their surfer dude voices.
Right. It's very extreme.
Yeah,
but and I liked that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that's who they are, and that's that's one of the probably the thing that made them stand out in society was just their extreme, characteristics that they had.
Absolutely.
I will rate the movie, and I'll give it 3 out of 5 stars. 3? Yeah.
That's actually what I was expecting you to say, unless you just, for whatever reason, did not like watching it this time around. But for me, because there's that nostalgia factor, I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
I don't think I could give it quite more than that because it's not.
I expected you to give it more.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit more strict, I guess you could say, with my ratings and not give everything 5 stars or whatever. But so I don't think it quite goes into 4-star territory because as much as I like it, it's still not an amazing movie or anything. So it's not like an Oscar-winning movie by any means. It's not incredible, but I still love it. So 3.5 stars I think is a fair grade for it. I think it's still positive, 3.5 out of 5. I don't know. Now you got me wondering. Maybe I should give it 4 stars.
I consider 3 to be positive, but any lower than that would kind of start to get in the gray area.
Yeah. 2.5 is kind of getting towards meh category.
Right.
Kind of, yeah. I agree with you. So 3.5, I think, is pretty good. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. You can always leave us a comment on Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. You can tweet at us at Cinema Heroes, or you can leave a comment on our website, www.cinemaheroes.com, or our Instagram, which is also at Cinema Heroes. I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzo.
And as always, thanks for listening. Be excellent to each other. I forgot about that. We didn't talk about the air guitar. Oh, well.
They did do it a lot.
They did. And as a kid, I always thought that they were actually making the noise. Like I thought it was almost like a superpower they had. They could just go like that motion, and it would make that noise. I didn't realize it was just the soundtrack of the movie putting it in there.
Yeah.
I was a dumb kid, apparently.
Excellent!